Hey everybody, Gregg Bendian here, back at the PROGCAST. It's been a minute since we've had a chance to really get into the history of progressive music and its connections to jazz, its connections to rock, its connections to classical. And I think that in some ways, I'm just over the moon to have today a chance to speak with a gentleman who is imbued with all those things and brings his energy to all those areas of music and has done so for decades. You know him as the guitarist in Soft Machine, but he's done so many other cool things that we're going to talk about. His work with Stéphane Grappelli, his work with Nigel Kennedy and John Williams. I mean, there's so much. And if you listen to this program, you know I love the British music, and you know my work with Derek Bailey, and you know how much it means to me that I'm speaking to a great British guitarist. And I want to welcome to the show Mr. John Etheridge. Hi, John.
Hi, Greg. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. And thanks for that nice preamble. Great.
Well, it's all true.
Yeah, thanks.
Which I guess will
55 years I've been doing it. So yeah, 55 years as a professional. I've been playing guitar for 67 years.
Incredible. No, I mean it's what I love to talk about, because as an historian of music, I work at Yale Oral History of American Music, and that's American guys. But I grew up as an Anglophile with a mom who's an Anglophile.
Okay.
So, we were there. I have very early memories of Python coming to America and then getting into all of British comedy. And of course, I'd already been into all of British music, because by 69 or 70, I was already Court of the Crimson King and all of the Clapton stuff.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But that's so difficult to focus on every area I want to talk to you about, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
John, when you're coming up, and I know that you come from a musical family, yes?
Ish. My dad was actually a doctor, but he also played very good Teddy Wilson style piano. So
now, what did that bring? What did that give you?
Well, what it gave me was I heard jazz. I mean, I don't think, particularly from my generation, people born my year, 48, 49, there are very few people who had anything to do with jazz in that era, because pretty soon there was the Beatles, the Stones, Clapton, Hendrix. So I was into jazz because of my father, and he would play every night. He'd come from work, pour himself a drink, and he'd play Teddy Wilson piano, Sheik of Araby, I Surrender Dear, and play all these standards. And so I think I got it from that. And also my best friend at school, when we were starting to play, and we played, you remember the Shadows? Anybody remember the Shadows?
Of course, yeah. Of course.
Well, we all wanted to play like Hank Marvin, and so we were doing that, which was standard. But he had these Django Reinhardt records from his dad. And when I heard them, well, it was extraordinary. I've never heard anything like 1963. You'd never heard anything like Django Reinhardt. It was
right.
Astonishing. Everything about it. First of all, I mean, was I suppose, if I'm honest, in 63, first of all, it was the speed and the attack. Then later on, it was the harmonic ideas and the punch and the chords. And so gradually over the years, the whole thing meant a lot to me. But initially it was just like, wow. The first track I heard was their version of Way Down on the Swanee River, which is da, 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 da. He does these incredible chromatic runs. In 1963, that was absolutely mind-blowing. So we set ourselves to try and play Django Reinhardt type stuff. So this is, 64, 65, and everybody's going, you're crazy, what are you doing? And then the big thing for me, which I think was probably the same, perhaps for Alan, for a lot of people, was there was this sort of jazz thing. And of course, my dad raved about Charlie Christian. He wasn't interested in Django Reinhardt. For him, it was Charlie Christian with Benny Goodman, Teddy Wilson. So I heard a bit of that. It didn't really appeal to me at the time.
I just wanted to interject. There's something fun here. Is that I just had they just had Branford Marsalis at the university where I teach with his group,
right?
And he said the Goodman small groups.
Yeah,
he said Goodman small groups.
Well,
right?
Yeah, and Charlie Christian, who of course wrote those. I have a theory, and I know if I can historically back this up totally. Charlie Christian was first guy to write riffs with tunes over the top. You think of 7 Come 11, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da, and that goes on, and over the top is da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So that's almost the father of the heavy metal riff. I mean, he got it from somewhere, and of course his actual soloing style was based on Lester Young and put on the guitar. But I mean, I got to appreciate him later, but certainly initially it was Django. And then, of course, in 65, it was like, hang on, walking into a room in North London, and there's this bloke with this guitar that I didn't even recognise, a Les Paul, and a Marshall amp. And he's doing this thing, and I was already reasonably fluent, technically. So it wasn't anything to do with the technique. I was just going, how can a bloke get that sound out of a guitar? What is that? I thought, is that something on the amp? Is that something weird? And the whole approach, which was absolutely radical, it really was. I know it came from the blues, etc. But that thing that launched the whole guitar scene, really. That Clapton moment in 65 launched the whole thing. And funny enough, I saw an interview with Joe Bonamassa, who, obviously is a great player and everything, but he completely owned up about this in this interview, saying, well, I'm basically Clapton 66.
Well, and look, what a period. But I really would love you to jump right to then Hendrix shows up.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so what happened was, so we're worshipping Eric and following him around everywhere, and but I have to say, before I talk about Hendrix, I couldn't believe when I saw this how incredible it was, and I thought, I mustn't try and imitate this. It's an insult if you try and imitate it. And within a year, everybody was doing it. Everybody had a Les Paul. Everybody had a Marshall. They were all pretending they were listening to B.B. King, but actually they were just doing Eric. Anyway, and that's why Hendrix came to London, because Chas Chandler said, you can meet Clapton. Anyway, so Hendrix appears at the end of 66. And so we went straight off to see him in little clubs, obviously, because that's all everybody was playing in, little what would now be called jazz clubs, little blues clubs. And I remember the first thing when I saw Hendrix, I thought, well, this guy is like a summation of all the guitar that's happened. And it's all put together in this amazing package of rhythm and flow and he got the Marshall amp, so he was getting that sound, which I think he probably didn't get in America. So he was getting the sound, and it was the whole thing. And I have to say, this is the very first moment of Hendrix. He walked out, and of course he looked, we're little white middle-class boys, and there's this dude with hair and the military jacket, and he's got the Strat. I'll do it right-handed, but of course he's left-handed, and he goes like this, does a trill, and he looks at a girl in the audience and goes, and I thought, I'll never be able to do that.
No, you won't.
I'll never be able to get away with that.
None of us ever will.
No, but he just looked at a woman and went, and I thought, yeah, this is what it's all about. And of course, he was, they really were not anyway the same, those two. And
right.
So, Hendrix, he was a bit older, he'd had more experience. And he was a great showman in a completely non kind of contrived way. But a lot of what he did, I remember Jeff Beck, when he first saw him, he was furious. He said to Pete Townsend, there's this guy ripping off your act. Well, with Pete, it was like an angry British guy smashing his guitar. With Hendrix, it was like ballet, Everything was like balletic. And also the thing that actually completely knocked me out was all the movements almost were reflected in the music. So the music reflected the movements, and the movements reflected the music.
And this is funny. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's funny how the lineage goes. Then you see Vi, and then Vi is doing a movement for the sounds.
Yes, exactly.
Because Hendrix showed us that, and it's an incredible thing. You're right. If you watch the videos of those performances,
yeah. I think if anybody's watching this, the one to watch is it's sometimes called Hendrix in the West. It's at the Berkeley Performance Center in California. Not Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And it's about half an hour, because the whole thing about particularly recorded Hendrix performances, so many of them are badly recorded, or but that is about half an hour of absolute perfection, and that's the pinnacle, I think, of Hendrix live, that performance. And he's so happy, and it's all going. And because I used to see him all the time, and the gear couldn't handle it, the amps would break down, everything would go wrong. But I mean, it was so improvisational. I mean, completely a jam. And of course, he had much more imagination than Eric. It was poised, elegant, classic, with a beautiful sound and approach, and also, of course, an approach that was, at least for that first year, completely riveting until everybody started imitating, because it's quite easy to imitate. Mm-hmm. But imitating Hendrix is not really on. You either sound like you're really imitating him, or, in other words, there's a difference between an influence and an inspiration. Clapton, like Charlie Christian, Chuck Berry, Clapton, they're massive influences.
Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry and Charlie Christian. Hendrix is more like Django Reinhardt. It's like an inspiration, because it's so amazing. And if you do it, there are guys who sort of do Hendrix, and it's great because it's a great thing, but they're doing Hendrix. Where the thing about doing Clapton quickly became the standard way to play.
So can I ask you about the Hendrix thing in terms of guys like Robin Trower?
Well,
Rory Gallagher?
No, Rory Gallagher wasn't Hendrixy, really. Robin Trower is, and I have to say Stevie Ray Vaughan, quite a lot of his stuff is like a Hendrix tribute.
I mean, like the older cats, though.
You were talking about the older cats. Yeah, I think Robin Trower's marvellous. I think I really do like his stuff. But you can tell immediately where it's coming from. Whereas the thing with Eric, because it comes such a universal influence, like Chuck Berry or like Charlie Christian, kind of he's the source for everybody, except for, in my era, Albert Lee, Steve Howe, Robert Fripp, Pete Banks, perhaps. Everybody else has some sort of relationship with Clapton.
Is Peter Banks underrated?
I think he was. Yeah, I knew him quite well, actually. He was, he kind of an unhappy life, really. I mean, he was good with Yes, and I think there was personal problems there already, and that's why he left, or, but he was good. And he was, in some ways, kindred spirit, because it was that sort of jazz. What I wanted to do after that was to get back to my point about, say, Alan, Ollie Halsall, me. We were all trying to do a thing of sort of blending the kind of Clapton-y, rockish sound with jazz lines. And that's what I was totally trying to do from 1966 onwards. Not very well. But I got quite a lot of mileage out of it, because when I started professionally in 1970, so I went off to university, but I started professionally in 1970, and by then everybody was fed up with the Clapton thing. So when I went to auditions and did my sort of jazz rocky thing, they kind of liked it, I'm not claiming it was, it was okay, but I'm not saying it was mind-blowing. But they liked it because it was different. And I think Peter Banks, sort of similar kind of playing in the same area, in a way. And then of course, heard this guy, Ollie Halsall, who is woefully underrated, but I know why he's underrated.
But those who know.
Yeah, Yeah,
And,
he started it.
and check out Pato
Yes,
and
exactly.
check out Tempest and
Yeah.
find Ollie Halsall where you can, folks.
Yes, absolutely.
Ollie. And that stuff is fucked up because I'm so glad I'm speaking to John Etheridge about this, because I joined the three of you together and you just did it.
Great.
You,
Well,
Alan, and Ollie.
that's right. That's right. And so, but I have to say, to be honest, I mean, I was doing my thing and I thought I was pretty cool. And I was doing that sort of thing. And then I heard, I was listening to the radio. I can remember where I was. I was listening to the radio and it was a BBC in concert. And this bloke was playing and he had a great sound. And he was doing that legato thing that I'd never heard. And the first thing I thought was, bloody hell, because of Django, I was more of a picker. I was thinking, bloody hell, am I going to get cross and say he's cheating? Or am I going to say, this sounds incredible? And I just went, listen to this. And I went to my wife and said, listen to this. I can't believe it. And it was Ollie Halsall. And I thought there were two guitarists. The other one was a guy called Bernie Holland, who I'd heard of. So I thought, that must be Bernie Holland. But it wasn't. It was Ollie. And this was March 71. This is before Mahavishnu. It's really before jazz rock. And I think what happened with him, he was a vibes player, pianist.
Well, let me ask you though, but you see, you're around in London for Ronnie Scott's Tony Williams Lifetime.
Yeah, I saw that. That was unbelievable. That was one of the things that absolutely, and I've not heard, there is a video clip of them on telly now, not on British television, on some television. But I went to the marquee and I heard Tony Williams' Lifetime, Jack Bruce, Larry Young, John McLaughlin, and he was, before the white robes, he was like a dude, really cool dude. And he had this like 125 or something Gibson. And it had a sort of jazz sound. And I was completely blown away. Not necessarily, I'm not just talking about his playing, where with Ollie Halsall, it was Ollie's playing. It was the whole thing. I didn't know where the tune started, where the blowing started, what was tune, what was improvisation. It was magic. And I've talked to people who were there and they're going, I didn't know what was going on either, but it was incredible.
And it was loud.
It was very loud, but I don't remember it being too loud. I could hear everything. And it was just, and Jack Bruce would be singing a bit and then it was just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal band.
It was more than the sum of its parts, right?
Oh, definitely. But there isn't really a satisfactory recording of it. I mean, the trio.
There's new video. There's not satisfactory trio. Yeah, you're right.
New video of Jack, Tony, and that quartet playing somewhere. It's okay. It's quite good, and you get an idea of slightly what was going on. It's quite tame because they're in a TV studio. In those days, being in a TV studio was quite intimidating because they probably made them do 17 takes, and so they don't really steam. But you get some idea of where they're at. But the Emergency Trio album, which was McLaughlin, Larry Young, and Tony Williams, I have to say at the time, I wasn't that mad about it. But later on, I got to really appreciate it because I loved McLaughlin doing that sort of up-tempo bop thing. Free bop. It was like free bop he did.
Yeah.
It's lines, but they're kind of free and very angular. And
Gary Husband speaks about this. There's that period of extrapolation where John's doing some really bizarre shit.
Oh, mate, the extrapolation was the thing that turned me back onto jazz after the Clapton Hendrix period. I heard extrapolation and I just went, wow, jazz with balls. This is what I want. And I imagine, as a guitarist, I imagine if he would listen to extrapolation and just hear all the kind of roughness, but that's what I loved about it. And Tony Oxley, do you know the thing about the album, the miracle about that album?
That's right. It's Oxley. Yes.
It's Oxley.
It's Oxley. Did you know I followed Oxley in Cecil Taylor's band?
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Bloody hell.
I got the call at 7 a.m. Cecil said, Tony Oxley's not available. Can you play with us in Boston tonight? And so that, because he had the trio with William and Oxley at that point, 89.
Okay.
So yeah, and Oxley is like a god to me. But please tell me anything,
Right.
you know, because
Did you
the
know him?
British thing. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent here, but I mean,
No, go on. Do
I'm such an admirer of that whole other way, just as I am of the LA thing, because everybody goes New York, Chicago, and other. I'm like,
Right.
yo, wait a minute.
Yeah.
LA has its own thing. You cannot
Yes. Yes, that's
sleep
right.
on Shorty Rogers, and you can't sleep on Shelly
Right.
Manne, and
That's
there's
right.
so much stuff going on over there. And then I
Right.
worked with Nels Cline and those guys over there, and
Yeah.
G.E. Stinson, and seriously their own thing. Then I
Right.
also spent time in Chicago, their own thing. Okay,
Right. Okay.
it's not just about New York. But then I was also, since I was working with Derek, I was going to London, and I was playing with all those guys, Beresford and Lowell Coxhill
Yes, of course.
and
I played with
Gavin
Lowell.
Bryars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I was in company, Derek's company,
Right.
whatever that was at the moment. We did ICA in
Right.
'88 summer, where I played Jamie Muir's gear. I borrowed
Ah.
Jamie, and I became
Oh,
friends in '88.
fantastic.
So yeah, it's incredible, because I was looking at the list of people that were in Soft Machine, like Mark Sherrick, and people
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you
You
know,
knew them all.
cross all over into
Yeah.
these areas. And you're
That's
that
right.
guy too, because I mean, I want to go to so many areas with you, but obviously this is kind of like you're talking about the explosion, the Big
Yeah.
Bang, right?
The Big Bang. Yeah. Exactly.
There's all sorts of things now. You're going to progress and lead in areas where we look at guys who are going to be able to, like John McLaughlin, going to be able to go classical, going to be able to
Yeah.
work with the
Yeah.
real classical players.
Yeah.
Branford, by the way, I got to give him credit. He spoke about how badly he played with classical players and how he really had to like get embarrassed. Admittedly, and then like, okay, now I'm going to deal with the classical players, and I know about that too, because
Yeah.
you know you have to show up for that.
Oh,
But
oh,
John,
God. Yeah. Yeah. Go
you
on.
know, I'm so interested in your perception before you joined Soft Machine. What is Soft Machine? Because you know it evolves so quickly over a short period of time into a totally other thing. But it starts as
Absolutely.
early as '66. So I'm
Yeah.
imagining you're seeing them with Wyatt. I imagine you're seeing them.
Well, I have to say, first I knew of Soft Machine, and the first real contact with I had them in listening terms was Third, because my friends at university in 1970 were crazy about Third, which I dug quite a lot of. But I have to say, as a guitar player, I was thinking, well, they haven't got a guitar. I'm not that bothered. So I had a very good friend who was a Soft Machine fanatic, so I heard most of the stuff. But the in for me was Soft Machine. I mean, I've been playing with progressive rock bands, particularly a band called Darrell Way's Wolf that I joined in 1972. Darrell Way was pianist with curved air, violinist with curved air. And the thing was, I got, and this is really interesting actually from a psychological point of view, because people won't understand this unless only people who've experienced this. I started playing with him, and I got the most ludicrous praise in the music press, right? And it was just at the point where I was hearing Ollie Halsall, and I just heard Alan, and they were all going, there was a guy called Chris Welch, who every time I see him, he's still around. I go, mate, I owe my career to you, because he gave me this ridiculously the really over-the-top reviews about how supposing amazing I was. And I didn't feel amazing. That's the thing. That's what's really hard. And it just burns your brain, and you feel so embarrassed. And but I'd had all this stuff in the press. Now, in those days, you didn't really hear anybody unless you made a huge effort to go and see them, right? Now, I'd seen Alan a bit, and I don't know if he'd seen me or not, or maybe he just read this stuff, or maybe he'd heard the odd album, right? But I went to see Soft Machine in February 1975 at the Rainbow, and I went because Alan was playing, and Larry Coryell was also on the bill, so it was a good sort of double guitar. 11th House were on the bill.
Oh, so 11th House with Muzan?
Yeah, moves on. Yeah, 11th house with moves on, and was it
Randy?
No, it wasn't Randy. No, Mike Mandler. Anyway, it definitely moves on, and it was a soft machine, and of course, it was amazing, and Holsworth was fantastic, and I thought I'd really
White SG.
Yeah, white SG, and it was all like these incredibly long guitar solos. That was all basically what was happening. So suddenly, I'm in this bloody band. I mean, I can take you through the process, but I briefly take you through. But actually, they only knew people on the jazz scene. Right. Scenes were very separate in those days. He left my number, which was very nice of him. He phoned me up from New York and went, "Hello, man. What's happened? Have they phoned you?" And I went, "Oh, well, no." And he said, so he gave them my number, and anyway, they came down. I was playing with a hippie band called the Global Village Trucking Company. Really nice bunch of people, and actually a good band, really, but very kind of Grateful Dead-y. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, I guess that's why I've played with so many different people, is, I have got a thing, but I don't necessarily have to do my thing. Oh,
this is interesting. Could you talk about that?
Yes. So I'm just playing in a way that kind of suits the Global Village, right? It's, I'm not dumbing down, but I'm playing economically, trying to play a little bit country funky.
You have to play the music, right? Exactly.
Anyway, well, we're doing this gig in Swindon, and somebody said, "Oh, I saw the soft machine guys were here." And I went, God, oh my God. And apparently John Marshall said, "Well, he can't play." And Carl Jenkins said, "No, I think he's got something." Anyway, so I immediately phoned up their manager and said, "Can I do an audition tomorrow?" Right. So I went down there and did my thing and burnt as much as I could. And I remember John Marshall got off his kit. He came over, he went, "Well, you'll do." So I got the gig.
That's beautiful.
They'd been auditioning kind of jazz guitarists from the British jazz scene, and they're just not suitable for the soft. Really nice players, but not suitable for the soft machine. Not suitable, and I had to promote the Bundles album.
You're doing the Bundles tour.
Yeah, I'm doing the Bundles tour. Exactly.
Because he doesn't tour the Bundles album. No.
Well, they'd done it. They'd done it before it was.
Okay.
But they'd done it. They did it in February in the Rainbow. They'd done it, but it was recorded and then released, and then there was the promotional tour. So I did that, and now that was hard bloody work. You can imagine, because it was really, really long guitar solos. Ratledge was pegging out of the band. He did a bit. Jenkins had sacked himself as a soloist, basically. So it was basically guitar solos and John Marshall drumming up a fury.
Because really, the keyboards don't solo until and then there's saxophone.
Well, hang on a sec.
Sorry.
On bundles, there's no. Mike does a few solos. He'd do a little bit, but he had kind of lost interest. He really didn't really want to be there. And Jenkins, who'd done quite a lot of soloing early on keyboards and on oboe and stuff, he'd more or less sort of, he did one oboe solo. So it was mainly these guitar solos. And so me and John Marshall formed a kind of alliance. So I said, for God's sake, I'd set up my gear next to him. Yeah. That's why my left ear is quite down. Mm-hmm. I'd be next to John. And I'd get my amp in such a way that I couldn't really hear myself too loud. So I'd just be roaring away, just trying to keep it going. Because I just wasn't used to playing really, really long solos. I mean, but I got into it through that because I had to.
Can you talk a little bit about organizing a long solo?
Well, I can now, yes. In those days, I just got my head down.
But you figure it out because of having to, right?
But now I'm feeling more calm about the whole thing. Right. I mean, I know how to do it. I mean, I still do as a profile, you see, and I've done it for years, and I love doing it because I love C minor. Throughout my 55 years in the business, all my best solos have been on C minor. So it's a C minor groove, and I feel of it like a sort of great big open space. So now what tends to happen, and I suppose in ways it's slightly formulaic, I start kind of down the bottom, and then there's a lot of, as well as rhythmic devices, not necessarily conscious, there's a lot, because there's no chord going on, it's just bass and drums. I'm technically in C minor, but I play all over the shop. Whereas, of course, if you listen to the original, Alan stays in C minor. And funnily enough, Carl Jenkins, well, actually, no, he doesn't. No, Alan moves up and down chromatically, actually, but Carl Jenkins was very keen on people staying within the scale. So that when we recorded the Softs album, and there's a track called Ban Ban Caliban, there's a saxophone solo from Alan Wakeman, and he made me tell Alan Wakeman not to play outside.
That's heavy. Like it. Yeah, I get it.
Playing. Fair enough. Anyway, but now if I'm playing a long solo, I mean, the point is I do appreciate dramatic soloists. You know, you think of Wes. There's a guy over here called Mike Walker who's just magnificent dramatic soloist. So I try, if you're not got too much adrenaline going, you can try and just sort of start, and you try and hold off playing some lines quite a long time. Once you start playing lines, you're then committed, I think, in some ways, to lines. So shortish phrases, slightly longish phrases, and then moving in and out, which of course has got some science to it, but in the end it's just about your ear. It's how you come back into the so you've got the, say, C minor Dorian tonality, C Dorian tonality. You're going out, and there's all sorts of ways you can think of it as a sort of formula going out, but also you can just play dissonant notes and bring them back nicely into the key, and you're there. And then I start getting into line playing, and then that builds, and then with Has a Profile, what I tend to do is when the chords come in, there's a chord passage at the end which it rises up, which is basically kind of Phrygian-ish. I then have a little bit of octave on the POG, a little bit of octave up, so there's a bigger sound. So that's how I approach that solo. And if it's a long solo, and usually they were all on pedal points. That's the other thing. All the Soft Machine solos in bundles were on pedal. Oh no, they weren't. There's the thing called Land of the Bag Snake, but mainly they're on pedal points. So, but at that time, I was just trying to keep it going. I think I did all right, and people liked it because I played a lot of rhythm guitar, which they appreciated. You got the fact that I played when other people were playing, I'd be playing rhythm passages, which Alan didn't do. So they kind of liked that. They kind of appreciated that. But it was a tough call, and but by the time we did the Alive and Well album, Soft's this good album, but the Alive and Well album, which is not such a good album compositionally, but if anybody gets to hear that album, it's recorded in 1977 in Paris. But I got the SG and a Marshall amp, and I got a sound that I really liked, and I played how I liked. Because I started off on if anybody guitar-wise interested, I mean, I did the first album I played the Stratocaster, which is actually, again, physically tougher. I was looking for guitars that were physically easier to play, so the SG was less demanding physically. So if you hear Live and Well, 1977, I mean, that was the first time I heard myself and thought, ooh, that's good. Other times I'd hear myself and go, oh, it's all right, okay, I'm not totally embarrassed. But this album, Soft Machine Live and Well, is and I do. I mean, it sounds bullshitty, but I think it's probably certainly by 1977, it's like the fastest picking guitar that anybody ever did. I couldn't do it now.
So I was doing. This is so interesting to me, though, because this is the chemistry set moment where you're figuring out that we're really going to do this. Yeah. We're really going to play jazz, and we're really going to rock out. We're really going to improvise. And we're going to fashion the music in a way that will allow us to have all of our druthers. And we want to be really impressive players.
Yeah,
And this is true of every scene I just mentioned moments ago.
that's
And I
right.
think,
Well,
right?
yeah, and it's true of our scene now. I mean, our new
Yep.
album, 13, is completely got that, I think. This is why, I've continued in this sort of soft machine thing, because in a completely selfish way, I get to play and be the biggest of me. Now, all these other people I've worked with, which you previously mentioned, all been great. I perhaps will get onto them. But this is the one where, this is the soft machine one, is where first of all, I hook into my young self. And secondly, I can improve on my young self and play much better than I did back in the 70s, even though probably physically I'm not as speedy as I was. But I don't know, I haven't really noticed. But I certainly use more overdrive on the amp, because that always helps. That always helps you to
Understood.
get it going.
But folks,
Because
the current iteration of Soft Machine is balls to the wall and fantastic in so many ways. Just having seen them live here in New Jersey, with Tim Motzer opening on guitar. Shout out to Tim. But that was a mind-blowing show. Shout out to Tim.
Well, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Mind-blowing, John, because, the unit is so comfortable.
Yes.
And can I say the thing you mentioned earlier, which is one of my favorite things playing this kind of music, is I didn't know when it was written and when it was improvised.
Oh, great. Oh, that's good.
That's my
good.
favorite, almost my top 3 things.
Well, that's right. That's so amazing you should say that, because that was exactly going back to Tony Williams' lifetime. What blew me, I thought, I don't know I don't hate anything, but the sort of jazz where the tune is played, then boom, everybody goes off into their bebop licks. You go, oh yeah, boom, boom.
When anyone says that about one of my pieces, I think success.
Yes.
Whenever they say they don't know, then I know I did my job.
Well done. Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. Yeah. Absolutely. And actually, just to get in, yesterday we did a very interesting thing, which should hopefully interest you and your listeners. There's a Syd Barrett tribute album being made, and I think Gilmore and Floyd have contributed something else. But either Theo or somebody found this 20-minute stoned improv from 1968 called Ramadan. And I know perfectly well, having been around at this time, exactly, I can visualize this. Everybody's like, yeah, man. And it's a proper stoned improv, but of course it's got lots of beauty in it. So it was very interesting actually, and exactly what you're talking about. The guys wanted to do it, and I was kind of thinking, what are we going to do? Imitate this? Try and play like stoned people in 1968? So it ended up sounding really good, because what we did was we sort of took bits of it, and we had a sort of kept a flavour of it, but we also did bits that were like us properly, and we put together this sort of 20 minutes of sort of improv that absolutely, if you play Syd's track, you go, oh, I can see how this relates. But the point is, it was a really good balance, because I was trying to he's playing his Telecaster, sort of, and I do sometimes like to hook into the idea of the thing where somebody doesn't have technical competence, but they've got lots of ideas, right? And
committed to ideas, yeah.
Yeah, so I tried to hook it on this track that we did. I thought, well, I used the back pickup, single coil, so it's a raspy sound, and I thought, I'm not going to go off on my stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to sound like it's a session, like, okay, I'm going to play like Syd Barrett, So this balance is really interesting, but the point is about the soft machine when we're playing now is it's not a matter of encompassing everything I can do technically, because I don't do any really much sort of finger, because I do quite a lot of solo gigs doing sort of finger style, so I don't know any of that, but what I do is emotionally and musically, in the sense of harmony and things, and sound and attack and energy, it has the max of me. And funny enough, it seems like a tiring gig, but it doesn't tire me out. And whereas some gigs I do, I'm really exhausted afterwards. And the other thing that's very important for me is that it's a group. Now, I've done lots of work. I mean, if we get on to Stéphane Grappelli, I really did enjoy being a featured sideman. I mean, that was really good fun because the show wasn't about me at all. He's got to carry the show. If I shine, everybody notices me. If I don't, it's not a problem. Unlike when I was with the soft machine, I had to fucking play. I had to play full on. And if I was feeling really bad or out of it or not on it, it was pretty obvious because I'd play a short solo and the gig would be over.
But Grappelli must have been cool because
totally cool.
A lot of people get fired for getting noticed on the gig.
Oh, no, he loved it. You're right. You're right about that. No, I've managed to avoid mainly in my life being in bands like that. He loved it. Partly
Beautiful.
Because he was over 70. Well, he was 70, and he wasn't particularly interested in the guitar. I think that's
76 to 81, folks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He wasn't mad about the guitar. He was mad about the piano.
1976.
Yeah, 76. And he, contiguous with the soft machine at the same time. So it was a bit of an odd gig. It was amazingly odd the way I got the gig.
So are you acoustic electric always?
No, okay. So what happened, I never had an acoustic guitar. So I got this guy, Diz Disley, who was running Stéphane's backing trio, comes round to see me. I said, why you come to see me? He said, oh, you were on television with the soft machine, and I didn't see that, but I saw somebody on the street, and he said, I'm looking for a young guitarist. He said, oh, I saw this bloke last night on the television with soft machine. So that is no connection to Stéphane Grappelli, but as it turned out, because of my Django background, I knew the stuff.
That's insane. That's insane. That's a glove fit on a hand. That's insane.
But I thought, and now I think the difference, I suppose, because it was Stéphane, otherwise I'd have gone, hang on, mate, I don't do straight jazz. I didn't know anything about straight jazz, really. I knew my Django things. Okay, so this is really interesting. So we went, and the whole sort of technically audition thing was very strange. And in fact, if you've got time, I'll keep it brief, but it was a really funny story because he comes in and he won't look at me. Now, I'm thinking back on this years later, and I think what happened was the other guitarist before was a guy called Ike Isaacs, who was a chord man, complete chord man, no chops, no physical chops, but beautiful chords. And Stéphane loved beautiful chords. That's what he cared.
Sure.
So he liked being accompanied by this Ike Isaacs. Anyway, Ike Isaacs and Diz Disley had fallen out, and Diz Disley had summarily sacked Ike Isaacs. So I think that when I got there, just before he met me, Diz probably said to Stéphane, oh, by the way, Ike's not here. We've got this young guy. And so he walked in, he wouldn't talk to me. Okay, so he won't talk to me. So he talks about me through Diz. He goes, Diz, ask him, does he know them their eyes? So Diz says to me, do you know them their eyes, John? I went, yes, I think so. So we start off, and it's like ludicrous tempo. And I haven't even got my own acoustic guitar. I don't have an acoustic guitar. I'd never played steel string acoustic in my life. Can you believe that? I'd never played.
No, I didn't know.
Huh. And so, I mean, I may have done the odd. I had actually. That's a lie. I'd done the odd, borrowed an acoustic guitar occasionally to do a session or something, And on Darrell Way's Wolf, I played one or two acoustic guitar solos. But basically, I didn't play acoustic guitar. I was a SG man. Anyway, so we started, and the second chord I played was a D7. Okay, and he stopped, and he wheeled around. He went, "What's that horrible chord?" And but without even looking at me, just stopped, looking at Diz, and said, "What is that? What's that horrible chord, John?" I said, "Oh, I thought that was a chord Django, but he would never play that horrible chord at all." Boom, 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 boom. So we got through that thing, then he goes, let's play Manoir. We play Manoir de mes rêves. Alors, tell him to accompany me. So Diz says, accompany Stéphane on this. I mean, I'd never done a collo voce accompaniment in my life.
This is insane.
Goes, and I'm plonking away on D, and he goes, oh no. So he says to Diz, you do it. So I thought, oh well, this is all a bit of a waste of time. But what do you expect? I'm a kind of jazz rock electric guitar player. I don't even know what I'm doing here. And I was thinking, well, I'll be able to tell people, that I met Stéphane Grappelli, and So then he goes, hello. Now we do something for the young people. Let's do You Are the Sunshine of My Life. Now, I'd brought my nylon acoustic guitar, which I did know how to play. And I picked it up and we played, and I thought, well, I know this tune as well as they do. I actually know this tune. So I played it, and he waved to me sort of to do a solo, and I quickly stuck in everything I could think of. And we got to the end of the tune, and he finally turned to look at me and said, hello, baby. Oh, I like that, what you did there. That's good. That's fast business. It's very good. It amuses the tourists. It amuses the tourists.
Oh.
So then he said, oh, I like him. He's a nice boy. I like him. And that was it. I was in.
Awesome.
Isn't it fabulous?
Fabulous.
But I did rely on Diz, who was the old school guy who knew all the tunes. So I played lead guitar over the top of him. And in fact, if anybody's interested, you can look up Stéphane Grappelli and me and Diz Disley at the Albert Hall. And I do this long solo on St. Louis Blues. But basically, I kind of was winging it by ear and just listening to Diz's chords because I didn't really know the standards. In those days, you couldn't get a fake book. You couldn't get any kind of material. You had to learn every standard. You had to learn it in your head, So gradually I got to know a few more. And, but I remember at the end of the first tour, there were people always falling out with each other in the rush. It was great on stage, and it was quite good off stage. But Stéphane and Diz would have a row or something.
Was Stéphane a diva?
Yes and no. Yes and no. He could be divish. The thing about him was he was really he wasn't self-consciously married to music, but he only seemed to be quite happy when he was on stage with his violin. The rest of the time, because he was an orphan and he had he was on the streets of Paris. He was very insecure, very suspicious, very tight, I wouldn't call him mean because he wasn't, but he was tight with money because he was always worried about money. And this made him kind of watchful all the time. So he's not a diva, no, but people found it difficult to deal with, and he used to throw little tantrums and things, and so he could throw diva tantrums. But the difference between him and when I was with the Soft Machine is when we were on stage, it was all like plain sailing. It was just, it was so unpressured. He'd play, and he'd never do a post-mortem, and he'd come off stage, put his violin, and we'd go and have a meal. And, of course, everybody loved it. The reaction of the audience, I'd never seen anything like this, people reacting like this. First gig we played, and the door opens, and everybody comes in and goes, oh, this is before the age of Facebook and things. So people were a little less exaggerated with their praise and things. People were coming and going, oh, it's marvellous, that was so marvellous. Oh, you were so marvellous. And I look at him and he's just going, oh, thank you. And of course, this happened every gig. Now, nobody opened the dressing room door of the Soft Machine and went, oh, God, it was marvellous. I bet they're going to go, yes, very good. Yes, that's very fast. A good technique there. So it was a very light kind of atmosphere, and that was great. And of course, as a featured sideman was brilliant because you started getting a lot of attention from the press and things, but you didn't feel like you were carrying the gig, because he's carrying the gig. He's Stéphane Grappelli. So I wouldn't say I was carrying. I mean, it's conceited to say I was carrying the gig in the soft machine, but I had to play these long solos. You know, I really had to at the beginning, particularly for the first year. And then we got Alan Wakeman in for a bit, Rick Sanders for a bit, but we got another soloist. So, but for the first year or so, it was, you know, I was doing the bundles thing. So when I got into the Grappelli thing, it was like, it's relaxing. And of course, everybody goes, "Oh God, you're following Django." I said, "Well, I'm not following Django. If this was 1953,
well, you have
Django
a reference point,
died,
yeah."
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard Grappelli play, and this was very relaxing for me. I'd heard Grappelli play plenty of albums and things with some very average guitar players.
Oh.
So I didn't feel I was under pressure because he didn't care. He didn't care.
Oh.
He didn't care about the guitar. He loved the piano.
Right.
Art Tatum. I used to play him guitar stuff, and he'd just go. I remember I had a recording of Joe Pass and Herb Ellis doing 7 Come 11, like blazing. And I played it to him, and he just went. He really only cared about the piano.
Interesting.
And of course, he was absolutely obsessed with the idea that you had to play the right chords behind him. I mean, there was always this rivalry with Django, you see, the Django Reinhardt rivalry. The very first time I saw Stéphane Grappelli being interviewed, I think around 1964 on the television, comes out, plays a tune, and then he's interviewed, he sits down, and the guy says, and I knew, didn't know then, but I know from later on that this is what he actually totally hated. Sit down and go, "Yeah, now you played with Django Reinhardt." What was that like, you see? He hated that question, you know. And so he said on this interview, he said, "Oh, he was very good. He never played a wrong chord behind me."
Those guys are serious about this. How you play with them is more important than anything, because you're setting them up. They're not playing with you.
Exactly. And of course, Django and Grappelli had a way of playing that completely ignored the accompaniment. So he'd do his own call and response. So when he played the melody, he'd go da 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 da.
Because you weren't going to do it.
Yeah. I tried to do that. I tried to get some in. So sometimes when I hear live recordings of us, he's doing a trill and I'm doing a run, and I'm doing a run. Because I was quite brazen. I mean, I must have had a lot more kind of nerve. And he kind of liked it. He did like it. Because, as you say, a lot of bands, you'd get the sack if you were kind of going for it. You know,
the worst was with Cecil, it was encouraged and acknowledged, and then it got to be too much because he heard about it from people too much. Because, first of all, why was he playing with Tony Oxley? That's one thing. He's the first white drummer. Now he's got another white drummer.
White drummer, yeah.
And he's getting noticed because I'm doing something different. And I thought that was my marching orders, by the way. So anyway, I don't want to focus on that, but just the idea, the notion of, then you get too noticed. And then I found out later that he told me that was the reason. I was getting I was getting too much attention. So whatever, you can't steal focus from the leader, but I just thought I was doing something for the music.
I'm sure you did, but I have had that experience. But luckily, with him, I think really because we used to have one long solo every night. And I do a solo on St. Louis Blues that could go on forever. And he'd sit on his chair, and he liked sitting on his chair and more or less going to sleep.
Yeah.
So he'd always say to me, "Give me a very good intro back into it." So I do that really obvious so he could leap up. And also he loved it because it went down well. Certainly when we were playing all acoustic, it really went down well. And so, you know, he felt sort of, you know, he didn't feel the slightest bit threatened, but he would feel threatened when we played, say, with Dizzy Gillespie or something like that. He really would get twitchy.
Because he wasn't in full control?
Exactly. And in fact, I got to play with Dizzy Gillespie because of that. It was basically, it should have been Stéphane Grappelli, Dizzy Gillespie, Kenny Clarke, Pierre Michelot, and the pianist. And he insisted that I come along as his ally. So I had to sit next to him. And then we're sitting there and Dizzy goes, "What are we going to play?" You know. And Stéphane goes, I don't know, what are we going to play? And Dizzy went, how about in a mellow tone? And Stéphane goes, what key? A flat. I don't play an A flat. So Dizzy went, okay, we'll play the tune in A flat, and then we'll go down to G for Stéphane's solo. So I had to do the solo in G as well to show solidarity. And then they went back up to A flat for the rest of it. So he wanted to be in control. Yeah, absolutely. But that's understandable, because particularly European jazz musicians of his era felt quite, because after all, him and Django were the first Europeans to make any mark internationally in jazz.
Did they make money, John?
Stéphan made loads of money later on. Yeah, Stéphan was very rich because he never spent anything. Well, he's grown up on the street,
Did he pay you okay?
Yes. No, that's what I mean. When I say he was tight, he wasn't mean. If he had money in his hand, he found it very difficult to take it out of his hand. But when he arranged our fees, we got better paid when he arranged the fees than when other people arranged the fees. And we got well paid, actually. I mean, I was on tour with, we used to tour with Dizzy Gillespie's quartet and Rodney Jones, and Rodney and I would talk about what money they were getting, and we were getting much better money than they were. Wow. Much better.
See, that's interesting too. Just for my musicians listening, I'm always interested in how guys talk about that. Like Terry Gibbs, I'm sure who you remember. I did his oral history. He was 94. I can't even imagine if he's at 100 now. And he talked about George Shearing being, quote, funny with money. And it was the first time I heard that phrase. Do you know this phrase?
Yeah, of course. Of course. And it's quite surprising who is and who isn't.
Yes, isn't it?
Actually, okay. It was okay. I mean, he obviously got his fee, but he didn't place it in such a way that we couldn't get anything. We got, I think, by jazz standards, pretty well paid with him. Certainly, I was getting double what Rodney was with Dizzy.
Yeah.
And Rodney had to play their asses off because Dizzy, when he couldn't be bothered, he just banged the bongos. And Rodney or Ed Sherry or Cherry, or whoever was the guitarist at the time, they'd be playing and playing and playing. And it wasn't like they were being featured like we were with Stéphane. They were just like, Dizzy's going, okay, you play.
I just saw Dollar Brand do that. Abdul Ibrahim did that. He just sat at the piano and the drummer and bass player had to play for half an hour or more. And then he came on to play and then started to play and then stopped playing. And then they had to keep doing, I mean, it was excruciating. But I understand.
He's extreme age. He's got extreme age, hasn't he? Whereas Dizzy wasn't that old at the time. I mean, Ibrahim must.
Oh, that was Attitude. I'm sorry. I was misimagining it. We'll edit my part out.
Oh, okay.
But yes, so John, can we jump over to some of my favorite British jazz musicians who nobody talks about?
Okay, go on.
Okay, John Heisman.
Oh, well, John Heisman, I know from doing so many albums in his studio. Now, John Heisman was, it was such a shock when he died. The last time we recorded at his studio, we still record at his studio, of course he's not there, was, 5-6 years ago, and he was in such good condition. And he was he's one of those people that when you're with John Heisman, you think, why am I not like this? He seemed to be able to manage anything. He could, and his motto was, we can do anything. I said, John, can we, John, we can do anything. And that was his kind of motto. And he so many things about John Heisman I really admired. I mean, he obviously great drummer. Then he subsumed himself for Barbara, just became the drummer in her band, right?
Right.
He did have features. Barbara Thompson Brown a bit.
Right.
Then when she got Parkinson's disease, he became a world expert on Parkinson's disease. And he used to go to conferences advising people how to deal with this. And she had a farewell concert. I'm laughing because it's so amazing. Probably late 90s, early 2000s. And she carried on for about 15 years through his through his administration, she just managed to carry on, and she finally packed up in 2012, 2013. She played with Colosseum, and she had this sort of frozen Parkinson, so she'd just sit there. And then I think they'd either get her up or something, but then when it came time to play, she'd play. Fine. And he used to have to wake up every 2 hours to turn her position over in bed. So he never got a proper night's sleep. And he was absolutely fantastic bloke. And, obviously an amazing drummer. Everybody knows that.
A special kind of drummer. And I talk about this a lot too, which is the moment where guys have been probably playing jazz. Yes. You guys even had skiffle.
Yeah, he did play jazz.
Okay.
I've seen him play jazz with Graham Bond.
Right.
Orthodox technique, orthodox, not matched, orthodox. And he was a real jazz drummer,
right,
playing jazz with Graham Bond. And then he became, and of course, his solo, which, I mean, the thing about his solo was completely worked out. It's not improvisation. But if you only heard it once every 3 or 4 years, it was just so amazing. The way the bass drum would go faster and the snare would go slower. It was just a marvelous bit of circus act. It was just brilliant. And he was so organized.
So
a brilliant guy. And but I never played with him. Never played with him. But I knew him, of course, through this.
But he's a phenomenon, I think, and he is unto himself.
Absolutely. Amazing guy.
And you know what made it over to my local record shop where I had a British import section, Colosseum 2.
Well, that was good with Gary Moore.
With Gary Moore, man, that's badass.
He was great.
Right?
Yeah.
Don Airy.
Yeah. Gary Moore plays great on that.
Gary Moore always sounds great.
He always sounds great.
Yeah.
He's in his sort of fusion mode then.
But it's a funny mode, right? It's like a post-Jeff Beck mode. It's clearly a Jeff Beck, Mahavishnu, RTF kind of band.
That's right.
Well, I produced the first posthumous Jack Bruce album
did you?
Live in New York at the Bottom Line Club, where I'm the archivist. And so it was the Sanctious, Clem, and Cobham band, 80.
Oh, that was a great band.
So we got a great recording and we put it out. And I got Marshall and Heisman to write something really nice about working with Jack Bruce.
Yes.
And you know who else gave me a really good note was Michael Anthony from Van Halen.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't know him. I mean, I know of him, obviously, but I don't know.
You know what I mean? So it was the kind of thing where when Jack passed, I thought he was one of the heaviest cats that we had seen.
He bloody was. I mean, there was a problem, obviously. He had some of the personality problems. I mean, that band, when I saw that band, I thought, yeah, Jack's got it together. Cobham, Sanchez, Clem Clemson. It was a great band. And he blew it, as I understand, with his Jekyll and Hyde character, It's such a shame because he was so talented. And yet, if he just sort of, you think from 69, 70, those albums, Harmony Road, Songs for a Tailor, this is going to be stratospheric in that sense.
It was a new thing, right?
Yeah. I think he just, because there's two kinds of personality. You've got Clapton, all the problems, everything, but he just plodded on. And Jack Bruce didn't do that. He played with other people. He did jazz. He did this. He didn't. And every time he got a band together, it would last about 3 months. And, he had a sort of restlessness, I think. And that particular band, when I saw them on the television, and I thought, this is such a good band. Him and Cobham and David Sanchez and Claire. Such a great band. And it should have gone on to be a kind of big band.
Do you remember the tune at that time, Running Through Our Hands?
No, I'm not sure.
Find the tune, folks, Running Through Our Hands. It's one of the most beautiful compositions of any kind of music. It's an art song, Jack Bruce.
Well, we wrote some incredible songs. And what a voice. The best white voice at the time. I mean, I'm running through it in my head, but certainly when in the late
one of the top voices of our time.
Best white voice. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So soulful, yet not imitative, really.
Oh.
Yeah. And
well, the ear, obviously.
Yeah, incredible. But you know, there's hardly anybody under 60 or 55 who's heard of Jack Bruce. You know, you say Jack
Oh,
Bruce.
don't say that, please. And in
Well,
UK?
Well, you'd be surprised because, I mean, Dick Exel-Smith, who was a great friend of mine. And
I was hoping we'd talk about him, yes.
Yeah, let's talk about Dick. There's so much to talk about. Who do you want to talk about? Go on then. Who do you want to talk about next?
You're getting
Dick.
there. You're getting there.
Dick. What a character he was. I mean, Dick Exel-Smith, you've got these people like Heisman. It's just like, in a way, they were antithetical. Heisman and Dick. Heisman, so together, so organized, so brilliant on every level, such a, and Dick, somehow, he always used to say to me, he said, I'm a legend. How come I'm skint? I said, well, Dick, I felt like I was so disorganized. I mean, he just couldn't, and he came from the generation where he expected to be managed, looked after, etc. He couldn't adapt to the Reagan-Thatcher post-era where you really have to be on the case. He was totally not on the case, but a remarkable man and intriguing character. We toured all over Germany for years, and he was really just unique. I mean, this is the thing. Everything is swings and roundabouts, and the swings and roundabouts of that era was you got these acts like Jack Bruce, you got these real characters.
Right.
Real characters.
Important, right,
but
right.
Obviously, they weren't able to run their lives.
Right, right. But it's a force of some sort.
Yes, exactly. Well, the force, definitely the force.
Yeah.
And the force is also there because they don't carry the briefcase, do the business, go online. And I mean, just before I met you, I was doing a whole lot of publicity stuff for a run of gigs at the Pizza Express. And for people of my age, it's kind of, you can't resent it. It's got to be done. You can't resent it. Younger guys just say, well, of course you've got to do your own publicity.
I still do it.
Dick or Jack Bruce, they can't do their own publicity. Anyway, Dick.
That's good
stuff.
We
played together for years. So I first met Dick. This is hilarious. He phoned me up. He said, he used to do this noise like he was ruminating. Dick Exel-Smith here. I said, hello, Dick, how are you? There's a new venue, the Jazz Cafe opening. Shall we do a duo? I went, oh, yeah, sure. So we just turn up and jam these duos. And I was working in Germany, and I said to a guy, I'm doing something with Dick Exel-Smith. Now, Colosseum were gigantic in Germany.
Right.
So the guy said, I'll get you a tour of Germany right now. I went, okay. So I said to Dick, look, there's a guy going to get us a tour. Very good. He was very upper class, talked very, very well. And he had a copy of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland that he used to take everywhere. And everything he'd say, he'd open up the wasteland and find a place in the wasteland that was appropriate to what was being talked about.
Oh, wow. That's deep.
And if you said something interesting, he'd write it down. I remember saying to Dick, I do distinctly remember this, I said, they say character is a mild form of neurosis. In other words, to have character means that it's which is an understandable position. He said, character is a mild form of neurosis, therefore I intend to have none. And he wrote that down. Fantastic. So he was and so we toured all over the place.
Wow.
But one thing, we're absolute chalk and cheese, right? Because I got this sort of, he's upper class, basically. He went to an upper class free expression school.
Wow.
Where you do anything you wanted at any time.
In the 50s?
In the 50s. Right? So
Where?
Dartington Hall, it was called. Dartington Hall in Devon. And basically
Devon.
Did
Devon.
Anything you wanted.
Well, that's Fripp territory too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's Fripp territory. And so Dick, he said to me quite seriously, he said, this is my motto. It's the same as Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was the weird magician.
You don't have to tell me.
Let I want be the whole of the law. And I thought, wow. In my life, brought up like I was, I want is so far down the line. It's like what I should do, what I owe that person, what's my duty, I've got to do this, I want to be the whole of the law. And that was his problem. He was kind of tolerant. He wasn't intolerant or anything, but he couldn't really muck in with people. He was always
you know the vampire law?
Go on.
The vampire law, as I recently heard it put, was the fullness of the law is do as thou will.
Yeah, that's it. That's Aleister Crowley. That's the law. That's the law. What absolutely blasted me about that was I thought, God, it would be so way down on my list. And I thought I must get it further up my list. Whereas for him, it was top of the list. So we play these gigs, right? We do these sort of 2-chord riffs. We play a long tenor solo, hours and hours. I play a bit of a guitar solo. Then you get the soprano out. And I go, Dick, the audience are getting, we're just vamping and you're playing for 20 minutes. I say, we're losing the audience totally. He goes, yes, but I want to.
Right.
Yes, but I want to. Fantastic.
You don't seem to understand. We're doing it because I want to do.
Exactly.
What is this problem here?
Yeah, exactly. What's the problem? But he was, a terrific guy. I was so fond of him. I mean, and we were very fond of each other because we were so different. And, he was just, it was really the day I met somebody else who was brought up at this Dartington Hall School, and they were very similar. Very, very selfish, but not in an aggressive, nasty way. Just
sort of like that's the mission, right?
Yeah, that's the mission. I'll just do what I want.
And that's probably the best human outcome. Like when I think about Wayne Shorter, I think that's what he lived for 80 years.
Maybe he did. Maybe
he did, and he was supposed to.
Okay.
And in his presence, you felt as though you were looking at the ideal human being.
Great.
The energy, the whole, the accomplishment. Yeah, I did multiple hours with talking about his life and for Yale, but also just going to concerts.
Yes, of course.
Being invited to introduce my son and have a moment where just you experience this and you just know that he had sheet music that he was writing with a pencil when we went backstage. He never wasn't doing music or praying, or meditating. So it's pretty amazing. Can I take a sidebar as a Anglophile freak and say, can you talk to me about the public perception or even personal perception of Crowley?
Well, he's a forgotten man now, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was quite a feature. He was somebody who was cited in the 60s, definitely. Although, of course, he was active years before. But he, this I want to be the whole of the law kind of approach was something that we supposedly invented. Every generation thinks they're inventing everything. Invented in the 60s. In other words, let it all hang down. Do everything you feel.
Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand is some. Yeah, Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand.
That's a weird. That book, Fountainhead. Have you read that book?
Yes.
Oh, that's out there.
These people are out there.
But Ayn Rand was an inspiration to Alan Greenspan, and so she's been hugely influential because we don't. You probably know more about Ayn Rand than I do, but anyway. But
just throwing it in there.
So Aleister Crowley, yes. I know not much, and I don't think Dick was because Dick certainly wasn't into the occult, but I think there was people like Jimmy Page were supposedly followers of Crowley in some sense, and Dick certainly wasn't. Dick was he was a total rationalist. He really was, although he wasn't actually very totally rational, but he was a rationalist by aspiration. So he would have no truck with occult or anything. Nothing to
Well,
do.
I guess that's me then. Really, always, I do find a interest in the occult and spiritualism in the U.S. And then
Yes.
I also find the analog with Conan Doyle in the UK,
Yes, of
being
course,
very
of course.
interested in seances, etc.
Oh God, absolutely, totally. But I mean, that's if we're sort of focusing on the English musicians we're talking about, Dick. I mean, as far as I know, it was just the mantra: "Let I want be the whole of the."
But what about do you think that, so the public doesn't think of these guys anymore? We're just interested in them because we're sort of geeking.
Yes, I think Aleister Crowley would be. If I went out on the street now and started talking about Aleister Crowley, most people wouldn't know what I was talking
Right.
about.
May I ask you about your classical experiences? Like, how do you cross over and work with someone like Nigel Kennedy?
Well, Nigel Kennedy was easier. I mean, the bigger question is like John Williams. In a sense, what I feel about me is I've had these parallel things that don't actually cross over. I mean, with Nigel came into our territory basically. So he wanted to do this. He wanted to do this Hendrix thing. I became part of that. We did it on acoustic guitars, but basically it's Hendrix. It's our territory. When I played with John, we got together, and first of all, he said to me, he approached me and said, "Do you want to do something?" I went, it's a bit like the Stéphane Grappelli moment. I'm going, what can I possibly do with the world's greatest classical guitarist except play badly next to him? Anyway, I went round there, and John's extraordinary character, because we did a lot of talking and we never played. And he said, "Yes, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this." And I was, if it was, a jazz thing or something, you'd all be jamming first and then seeing if you fitted.
Right.
And he more or less committed to doing something with me. Anyway, he ended up, first of all, putting a band together to do African music. Right. Exactly. Yeah, and so I thought, well, okay, he probably doesn't know, he knows probably as little about this as I do, and the other members of the band know as little about that. So I don't feel that inferior on that level. So I can sort of cope with that. So basically, now this was extraordinary discipline for me, because having been a kind of, how I played with the soft machine, I'm now holding down African guitar riffs, completely repetitive. My part would often be the same thing for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Now, the great thing was people come to the gig and go, "Well, you're not doing anything." Call that not doing anything. It was honestly, it was about a year before I can do it now. I can just settle on that groove and I can hold it. But, with your jazz thing going, and you want to go off on or put in a substitute chord or go outside or something, you bloody well can't. And of course, the time has got to be immaculate. So it was a really tough gig for me. In some ways, the Bundles gig was a tough gig, but this was a tough gig in a completely different way. Anyway, that went on for a bit. Then John said, "Let's do a duo." And I thought, oh, right, okay. Let's do a duo. I'm doing a duo with probably the greatest classical guitarist that ever lived. So, but he had a very clear idea of what he wanted me to do. He wanted me to do steel string guitar, and he'd do nylon guitar. He was never going to improvise because as he said, I don't do that. I was going to do it in the improvising required, but we weren't going to just do the sort of cod thing of like him playing arpeggios and me noodling over the top. So we got commissioned some compositions, which also cost me in terms of stress. Ben Verdery, do you know Ben?
Ben Verdery is my colleague at Yale.
Oh, great. Well, say hello to him.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben Verdery wrote us a piece. And you can say to Ben, I mean, I love playing this piece.
Oh, wow. Right on. Oh,
being a classical guy, he just sent me the part.
Shout out to Ben Verdery.
Yeah, shout out to Ben Verdery. So the hilarious thing is, Williams being the most constant musician ever. So I'd get the part, say, from Ben Verdery, and it'd be like really kind of avant-garde kind of thing. And I'm trying to read it. Well, the reading's not so bad, but I'm trying to conceptualize it and work out what's going on. When I go around to Williams and he'd just go, oh, let's have a look. And he'd open the thing up and just play his part straight, you know. But he seemed to like me, you know, we really got on well. And we fitted a thing which actually worked very well. And we've got an album out, which we only made one album, and it was live. This is the other thing you'll love, Greg.
Wow.
Oh, any musician will love this. So John goes, we'll form a duo, and we'll record live at the Guitar Festival in Dublin, and the record will come out in October. And I'm going, what? We're going to record live, one shot, and the record's already slated to come out in October. What happens if it's awful? What happens if I make millions of mistakes? You know, so
that's incredible.
I knew he wouldn't make any mistakes. So we recorded. I freaked out. I said, look, can we do some warm-up gigs? He went, sure. So I did it myself. I phoned up various venues and said, of course they went, yes, come. So we at least did one or two warm-up gigs. And then we recorded live in front of Paco Peña, Manuel Barroeco, 1,000 people, mainly guitarists, at the National Theatre in Dublin. A live album, completely live, no separation.
Really?
No separation, just mics suspended over it. I mean, I don't think I've ever been so, nervous. Anyway, we got through it, and it worked pretty damn well. There was one bit where my brain went into meltdown, and I just stopped playing. It was a Bach piece we were doing he'd written out two parts for this Bach thing, and I got kind of lost, and I just stopped. So we went back. We had to record the whole section. You couldn't drop in, so we recorded the whole section again because they left the mics up, which was very sensible of them. And so we did this. It's called Live in Dublin. John Williams, John Etheridge, Live in Dublin. And it's really good, like all these things, because it is really properly live. It's got an edginess to it, which actually makes it sound pretty lively. And, I'm at the end of it. I was so relieved. I can't tell you, but it was great. Anyway, so then we went and toured duo. And the thing was, to get back to really what your question is about is it's really interesting. As jazz or rock musicians, we take a lot of things for granted, almost unconsciously, because we've grown up like that. And classical musicians take a lot of other things for granted because they've grown up like that. I mean, one of the things is if you're playing and you look at the person you're playing with, we kind of know what we mean. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. Duo is...
kind of know what we mean.
Duo, you know what you mean, yeah.
You kind of know what you mean. But when John is really, really a classical musician, and I'd look at him and he'd go... So quite often, I would be looking at my feet. Because if I look at John, you can't just go, do another round or something. Everything, so much that we take for granted.
Very fixed.
Probably so much that he took for granted, he couldn't relate to me. So we worked very hard to find but we did. And we found a very good, we toured for about 7 years as a duo. And
wow.
It worked pretty damn well, actually, I think. We did some African stuff. I wrote a few tunes. He wrote a few tunes. We had Ben Verdery's tune. So we got away from the just classical arpeggios with random noodling on the top. So we didn't do any of that. People said, oh, I thought it was going to be that. I was really pleased it wasn't that. So it was a really good duo. And he's an fantastic bloke. I mean, he's such a good man. What's
it like being next to that sound coming out of the instrument?
Well, exactly. The first time, there's twice in my life I've had this. It was about the second gig I did with Stéphane Grappelli, and I looked up and I thought, I can't believe this. And then with Williams, the first gig we did, he hadn't worked out. He said, I need to get a solo set, because we both did sort of little solo sets. And so he did the Bach Chaconne. And I can't see what I was sitting there going, I mean, it was beyond, we hear classical guitarists, we know classical guitarists. You hear him doing that. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make you want to give up. It make me, it doesn't make you want to give up because it's another area. It's nothing to do, what we do. It's nothing to do with classical guitar. You just go.
It's a sonic force.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And he's like Roger Federer. The hands hardly move, and this huge volume is coming out of the guitar. And he's got these thin little fingers. And
people might get a kick out of this. Sometimes I work with Todd Rundgren, the singer-songwriter.
Yeah,
okay. So I'll play drums for him or percussion for him. And there was a moment that I'll never forget, and people, I think, will appreciate that this still exists, where he was facing me playing the keyboard and I was facing him playing percussion.
Yeah.
And I turned and I wasn't hearing him through my monitor. I was hearing him acoustically 6 feet away, and it was so fucking loud.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, that's power.
Well,
Projection.
Yeah.
It was just coming at my face, like out of his mouth, and I just got, you know what I mean? Obliterated.
Well, I do know what you mean, because following on from that, playing with Nigel Kennedy, standing next to his, because Stéphane's violin, he hardly moved his bow at all. But Kennedy, because they're trained to project, they're like opera singers. So you're actually deafened if you.
It's so loud, right?
It's so loud.
It's so open.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, he must. I don't know how they do it with their hearing. I don't know if they get hearing loss, violinists. I would think they must do. But it's so loud, the acoustic violin.
In the right space, right?
Because it was designed to, before amplification, to be heard above an orchestra. So when you're jamming with Nigel Kennedy on acoustic guitar, and he's like 20 times as loud as you.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And, as I say, working with him because he came into our area. So basically,
what were the Hendrix tunes?
Well, we did Third Zone from the Sun, Little Wing. Oh God, hang on. Well, it's on an album.
No, I know. I'm just saying ones that you enjoyed, maybe the top ones that you were the most successful.
I love the whole thing. I love the whole thing. I mean, it was really good. There again, it's not about. It was something I wouldn't want to have done all the time because I wasn't doing me. But it was such a great band of musicians, and such fun, and so wild. He's such a wild guy, Well,
let me ask you this: we didn't talk about Hendrix' machine gun solo.
Yeah, okay.
Is that an iconic solo amongst all guitar players?
Well, I guess. I mean, I got that album. I was knocked out with that solo. Knocked out with that playing.
Yeah.
Although I remember the review, I've got a very good memory for reviews, and Chris Welch reviewed it saying, well, guitar's moved on a bit since then. This is still incredibly effective. And because it was 69, 70, 69?
69, yeah. 69.
70. And
the midnight between the two, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's
the
other Hendrix.
He
became a different beast when he went back to America. It sort of slowed down, got much heavier. It was a really light and playful when he was in England. I mean, that machine gun solo, he wouldn't have done anything like that in England.
It was violent.
Yes, violent. Yes, exactly. It's very powerful, it's violent, and it's. But of course, those guys and Jeff Beck's pretty much so. They wrote the book. They're like the Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci of rock guitar. And what comes after is always relating to them, trying to have a heavier sound, trying to play faster, trying to play with more chops.
No, John, can I ask you, because I am from a teenager, a Jeff Beck devotee. Just got to see him in a gym here in New Jersey with Jan Hammer, and then got to hang out with him when he had Vinny in the band, and he just never stopped. And losing him Losing him
Yeah.
was such a shock.
Yeah, but it was a shock, but wasn't it great in a way that he never declined?
He
He
never
played,
stopped.
and he just went like that, boom. Yeah, no, he's the one. You see, Hendrix died, and Eric sort of went off on different directions, but Jeff Beck never gave up the guitar. I mean, I think one of the things about Beck is that he spent a lot of time, particularly in the 80s, he was playing, but not touring. So he never got stale.
So, John, I'm very curious about the factions, the tribes within the British scene. And one thing that I wanted to point you to and see if you could remember or comment about is the free improv scene, not free jazz, but and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say, if I say to you the Grapes, if I say to you the trio with Tony Oxley, Derek Bailey, and Gavin Bryars, as sort of being generally known as a ground zero, and then this whole branch of players starting to coalesce around this, including Evan Parker, including Christine Jeffrey, including Jamie Muir, including Hugh Jeffries, who was a Stockhausen assistant on electronics, live electronics. To what extent is AMM in the mix here? To what extent is Barry Guy and these kinds of players, Paul Litton, Paul Lovins? Like, talk to me about that scene a little bit in your...
Well, I can a bit, particularly the scene going back, because when I didn't really join the jazz scene. What happened to me was when the Stéphane Grappelli gig finished quite suddenly after 5 years, I thought, what the hell am I going to do? And because of that, I was accepted in the jazz scene. So I started working with all sorts of people between like 81 through the 80s, really, or every kind of jazz player. And I worked with people on the free scene and the jazz and the straight scene. Now, I'll tell you quite a few little anecdotes about this. I mean, I remember that I got a job. I was offered teaching at the Barry Summer School, legendary Barry Summer School. And in the Barry Summer School, there were two factions who didn't talk to each other. There was the free improv led by Tony Oxley, and there was the what you call straight or the contemporary led by Gordon Beck.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Completely intransigent characters. And occasionally these scenes would coincide, because the second teaching job I got was in Hull. It was a Hull course, and the drummer was John Stevens, and Tony Coe was on saxophone, Michael Garrick on piano. I can't remember who's on bass, but anyway, we had the tutors. The usual thing with these workshops is the tutors do a concert to open up the workshop. So we had a meeting to decide on the tunes, right? Okay. And the first thing, everybody's sitting around, and John Stevens, who's a free, as you remember, a free improv drummer.
That's right.
Said, oh, shall we do No Greater Love? And Tony Coe said, well, I'm surprised you say that. I would have thought that was a bit of a bourgeois tune, wasn't it?
Oh, dear.
But immediately there's this subtle standoff, so nothing was decided. And then we got to the first tune on the tutors' concert. And Michael Garrick, who would be in the Gordon Beck camp, said to John Stevens, now in the middle of this, just drop out, John, because I want to do a duet with Etheridge. So John Stevens said, oh man, no, I don't want to drop out in the first tune. And so Michael Garrick went, yeah, freedom, man, freedom. All these sort of bad vibrations. I'm the new guy, the little guy sitting there going, wow, these people. And so when Tony Coe was playing, he'd make John Stevens stop playing. He'd turn around and go, and would allow him to play. So there was all this internecine warfare between the improvisers and but of course Oxley could hack it in every area. I mean, Oxley was universally respected, Tony Oxley. Not necessarily as a bloke, because he was quite a feisty kind of guy, but as a drummer. And I worked with, I had an improvising trio with Paul Rogers on double bass and Nigel Morris, who was a Tony Oxley acolyte. And
cool.
amazing Tony Oxley type drummer. I only played with Tony a few times, but I played with Nigel, and we played with Tony Oxley around, and Oxley kind of dug it. And it was
It's amazing.
In fact, this band actually, to tell you the truth, this band was sort of half a tunes band and half an improvised band. So
yep.
I would never know, even though it's supposedly my trio, are we still on the changes, or have it? And I'd watch Paul Rodgers, and Paul Rodgers is a fantastic bass player.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, you know him. Right. He's an amazing bass player. But so we'd start playing the changes, and then I'd watch, and if his leg went up, I thought, we're playing free now. Now we're free. The best example of this, on this very same point, is John Stevens put together a quartet, which was John, Jeff Cline on double bass, myself, and Peter King, the amazing bebop altoist. Okay, so that was playing tunes, right? But there was also a thing he ran called Free Bop, which was myself, Jeff Cline, Peter King, and Paul Rutherford on trombone, and John Corbett on trumpet. And that was Time No Changes. So Time No Changes. No Changes, yeah. But playing tunes with John Stevens, Jeff Cline, me, and Peter King, I'm hanging on to the harmony, you know. And my friends would say, I can't tell any difference. And I said, when I did the quartet and we're playing changes, I'm really working hard not to lose the place, you know, not to keep it. I wasn't that experienced, you know, to keep the form going. And when we're doing free bop, I'm just having a blow. And they said, we can't tell the difference. Yeah. Well, you go, because sometimes, you know, playing someone like with Steve, I mean, John Stevens, bless him, he was a great organizer and a great.
Yes, he was a force. Yeah.
He was a real force. But,
how about Keith Tippett?
Oh, yeah, I played a lot with Keith later on with Soft Machine. He came and guested with Soft Machine. I love Keith, you know. I loved his vibe. I loved his playing, his kind of force and his dedication. He was really serious, dedicated guy. And I remember, because he lived in the country, and I said, how much practicing do you do, Keith? He said, well, I limit myself to 2 hours a day. In other words, he could have practiced all day, every day. And but he'd limit himself. So, you know, I suppose for his. And so he played with us. He came to Japan with the Soft Machine. It came about through Germans. Germans are brilliant at this. They phone me up. The lovely thing that Germans do, they phone you up. First of all, they phone you up and say, we haven't got money for money. We can only offer you 10,000 euros. And you go, oh, well, I think that'll do.
That is nice.
It is great. But this is probably still.
I'm going in July, so that'll be.
Exactly.
It's already, yeah.
They treat you great and they're brilliant. Anyway, they said, we want a guest. So we put our heads together. We said, why don't we get Keith? So we asked Keith. And then he did quite a lot of gigs with us in England, and he became a sort of, not a member of the band, but featured. And of course, he had an association with Soft Machine anyway, from way back. So you know, I always found him really inspirational. His playing, you know, really the dedication, the intention. That's the thing that comes across with people is intention. He really had intention.
That's a good word.
It is. I got that from Asaf, actually. It's right. It's the word. It's like you feel it. It's like Coltrane. I mean, it's all intention.
Well, McLaughlin once said to me, Greg, I just try to get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly right.
Let it come through.
Yeah. And
Vinny says, thought is the enemy of flow.
Yeah, exactly. It's all like that.
I mean, you practice for a reason, you know. I mean, you don't want to just play what you practice.
No, you practice in order you can get easier into that mode. But it's very interesting, say with something like Coltrane, if you just write down the notes, if you just play the notes, that's the half of it. And
then the expression.
Well, exactly, the intention behind the note. Whereas, of course, there are some players, I'd say like Stan Getz or something, where you can write down the stuff. I mean, obviously, it's not a binary, it's not either or. But, you know, played on, well, in a sense, bebop is like that. So played on an instrument, you still get a good musical thing.
Same thing.
Trey, it's got to be played by him like that.
So, like Derek Bailey or Fred Frith, were either of them interesting to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, totally. Derek, I didn't have that much contact with him, but Fred Frith, yes, because of Henry Cow and all that. And is he still around?
Yes, he is. He is still doing
you know,
well.
Him?
He's been on the program, and yes, I stay in touch.
I've never come in contact actually with either of those guys, really.
Well, Derek's passed for some years now.
I know Derek. Oh, Derek's been.
Yeah, but yeah, Fred's still going.
Great,
always going.
Great. But there was a very good free guitar scene in East Germany. Hans Reichel.
I was just going to say Hans Reichel. Yes.
Oh, you know him.
What about Keith Rowe, though? We are not East.
God.
But like those guys, I remember checking. I wanted to check out everybody, you know. John Butcher. Do you know Butcher?
No.
He's acoustic, I think, free.
Is this the thing about me, Greg, is, well, I think it probably happens to everybody with age, is probably in the last 15, 20 years, I've kind of lost touch with somehow the scene.
Understood. No, understood.
It just happens, you know.
I'm just curious about that, when that moment of everybody going their own ways and sort of like setting up your areas and like there will be no discussion, there will be no, we'll just run tape. And whatever happens, and like, you know, guess you'll take out the best bits. Apparently that's what Weather Report told Belden, is to take out all the shit that's not happening. You know, like then you release the album of all the best bits.
I do love, I do occasionally. I mean, I think I've got perhaps because of just the era I grew up in, I've got some sort of sympathy. In other words, for free. And I did an album with Paul Dunmore. Do you know Paul? Yeah,
of course.
Well, so Paul Dunmore, that was wonderful. The Paul Dunmore album, I thought, this is so relaxing. So that moment, okay, so supposing the gig starts at 8 o'clock, that moment when it's a straight gig where you're leafing through parts, you know, there's a deck bass player and you're going, oh man, do you know this tune? Oh no. Okay, so there's none of that. You're just in the bar, you warm up your instrument, in the bar, you go on stage, and that's it. And that's.
I love that you say it's relaxing. I love that you've said that more than once now. It's so relaxing because really that's the best state of play, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I find free improvisation really relaxing. And in fact, I remember, you know, I've been offered recording things with people I don't know. And I've turned them down. And then somebody said, oh, it's free improv. And I would have gone, oh, you've done it. You know, what I didn't want to do is go to Germany and go into a studio and somebody say, oh, play this, man, with some incredibly complicated shit. And I'm going, why am I putting myself through this pain? Free improv, oh, mate, I just love doing that forever. I mean, that's me, actually. I mean, I'm not known on that, so I'm not even, I mean, there is that scene that still goes on because I go swimming every day in our local pond, and the guy I always see up there does the door at a club called the Vortex.
Oh, the Vortex, okay.
Yeah, okay. And so he sees everything, he mentions it. That's why I was, you know, slightly embarrassed, because every name he mentions, I go, oh, yeah, that. But they have a lot of improvising people up there. And then there's a Cafe Otto where they have a lot of improvising. I mean, obviously the people of my age, like Evan Parker, I know. I mean, Evan Parker's solo used to be one of the wonders of the world. I mean, really. Wow.
An hour.
Yeah.
An hour of unfolding.
Yes.
It was I worked with him briefly, but it was just any time hearing him. Solo, tenor, soprano, just still, you know, still going. One of the major figures, you know.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. In fact, I played at his 80th, I think. We all got together at the Vortex. And
I played at his 50th. In New York, we did 50th in Chicago.
You're probably the same, You think, okay, binaries don't exist, right? We can accept that. But it's nice to say there are two kinds of people. The two kinds of musicians. Now, when I was playing with John Williams, he's comfortable when he knows exactly what's going to happen. That's when I start getting uncomfortable, because I start getting twitchy about maybe I don't feel like, and I'm totally comfortable when there's no music or no parts. I'm really comfortable. I am. I don't do it very often. And in fact, even playing solo, I haven't got the balls to go up in front. In fact, I'm doing a rare solo gig on Saturday, and I've got tunes and things like that. I haven't got the balls to go up in front of an audience out of London. London, I could probably do it, out of London, and just improvise. That's what I'd like to do. But I just think I'd look up, and it's just me and them, and I look up at them, and they're looking kind of quizzical and a bit, hang on a sec. I did one once where I advertised it as just improvising, and it was okay. But, so I in a way, chicken out because I have tunes that I play and things. But I'd like to. I mean, Tim, actually, I haven't got all the gear. Like, Tim's got all that gear. So when he does a solo thing, you see, you can... If you've got
it is that he can layer things. My whole solo thing.
I don't do enough of. Oh, you go on. Sorry.
Well, no, I'm just saying that when I toured solo, just to make it more personalized, I was a devotee of the AACM Chicago people. Like Steve McCall was my drum teacher in high school. Andrew Cyril was my teacher. And I was very interested in what Muhal Richard Abrams said as the leader of AACM through the trumpet player Lester Bowie playing solo. I got to see a Lester Bowie solo concert, which was half stand-up, by the way. Half stand-up, half playing. It was insane. And in the middle of it, he said, Muhal said, everybody's got to play a solo concert. You have to be able to play solo.
That's
and
right.
I took it as a thing in high school. Yeah. So by the time I got pretty good, I started packing my car with my gear and going and playing across the country, doing solo concerts, because I thought, well, if nothing else is happening, you could at least play solo. And I then came up with strategies to fill up an hour and a half or whatever.
Yes.
And so,
go on.
And just that's a really interesting thing, that it's Keith Jarrett's solo will always remain a high level thing of the one person thing, like Zakir by himself, you don't need, what else do you need?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So what can we do is the question, really. What can we tell people?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, one thing you picked up that you said there way back was that Lester Bowie saying you've got to feel. That's why I started doing. I thought that you've got to be able to do a solo concert, just to sort of say to yourself, you can hack it as a solo thing. And so I started.
Ralph Towner.
I really enjoy them because it's not a three-way. So if you're with other musicians, so I think the most difficult thing that I sort of normally do in my normal is go and play with a local rhythm section. It's really difficult on so many levels.
Really difficult
because you've got to work socially with them.
I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah,
I've decided not to do it anymore.
No,
it's so really, as Orson would say, unrewarding.
It is. It can be.
It can be very much so.
But it can be really unrewarding. I mean, normally nowadays everybody can play. I mean, I had some hilarious ones in the 80s. Hilarious. I mean, I remember going to in Cardiff, and it was bass and drums, and there was a piano. And basically, I said, what should we play? He said, the bass player said, anything. Let's play anything. And I said, well, let's play No Greater Love. So we start No Greater Love. He just started playing random walking bass. And the drummer had an arm like this, his cymbal. Okay? So I remember the absolute, you always remember great moments and horrible moments.
Moments of horror.
How on earth are we going to get through this night? how on earth are we going to get through it? I'll just have to do loads of solos, lots of intros. I mean, the pianist was okay, but it doesn't matter. If the bass and drums are not happening at all, it doesn't matter what anybody else is like. You can have a good saxophone player there. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter now.
You know, if the bass and drum, I mean, and he just played, and then we finished that tune, and I said, just friends? He goes, yeah, yeah. We started playing just anything. And I'm going, oh, come on. Anyway,
Yep.
You don't get that now. You don't get that now, but it's still a stress. Whereas playing solo, it's just you and the audience. You say it's half stand-up. I mean, I find when I do a solo, there's loads of stand-up because you're just communicating directly with the audience. And it's kind of relaxing because if you drop a beat, drop a bar or something, you know, it's actually much more kind of tends to be more relaxing than I expect it to be quite often. I haven't done one for ages, so I've been practicing a bit. So when we finish this, I'm going to practice my solo, even though I've got a soft machine gig tomorrow, but I kind of know that shit. So I'm going to do this solo on Saturday. Because I phoned up the woman, the promoter, and I said, are you expecting a solo? And she said, yeah. I went, oh, all right then. Because I was going to try and book my band or something. You know, I've got a nice organ trio that I do. But anyway, so the point is, Lester Bowie's point, yeah, everybody should be able to play solo. And also, it's good economically because the promoter pays less, you get more.
I have to say, I do still love it. And duo, I love. And you know, I'm doing an orchestral album at the same time, but it's fine. Yeah, orchestra, choir, percussion band, the whole thing.
Oh man.
But you know, it's taking years of overdubs. But the thing is, you know, I think scale is very interesting because it does come down to solo. And Cecil would say it comes down to playing one note. Can you make one note sing?
Yes, exactly. Well,
I love that.
I love that too. That's right. You get back to something like Jeff Beck, you know.
Right.
I mean, you know, to me, he's more and more and more my sort of inspiration. I don't mean to imitate, but in the sense that in the antithesis to the, I mean, I love jazz guitarists like Jimmy Rainey and things, but the note is never there in its integral entirety. It's leading to the next note. And Beck he's the nearest thing to a singer. Well, that's what kind of totally, getting back to the point, totally knocked me out about Clapton. I thought I'd never heard anybody sing on the guitar. Now, Beck took that to the max. So every note, he's like a vocalist. He's shaping every note. And when you work with a great vocalist, every note they're shaping. And that's so, and that really, you know, he's one of the few guitarists that actually, well, Clapton was like that in '66. I mean, it wasn't guitarists in the room all going like that. It was everybody going, you know, and the same thing with Beck. You go with a woman, they dig it, you know.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And I'm now going to tell the story I've never told of a guy who will remain nameless took a lesson with Pat Metheny. And it was the year of Bundles and Believe It. Yeah. And he said, Pat, have you heard this new Alan Holdsworth guy? You've got to hear this guy, man. It's unbelievable, man. He's still all over the instrument, man. He's playing this new kind of thing, man. And Pat goes, yeah, but does it pass the girlfriend test?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, I'm afraid to say, probably doesn't.
And so Jeff Beck always passed the girlfriend test.
Absolutely right. He did.
And there's something to be said for that. And John McLaughlin, in the forward to the big Jeff Beck book that came out, John McLaughlin writes, Jeff Beck was my favorite guitarist of all time.
Wow.
So a million notes versus one note. And, you know, you kind of look at also John's work within that spectrum. And, you know, your work within, see, one of the nicest compliments I got from Derek was, you know, you adapted to every situation. And I think that's what you do.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what
you can do your thing, but you can adapt.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And of course, the thing is, if you, in the end, you are what you are. I mean,
Truly.
we knew Alan so well. I mean, Alan can only be Alan. He was quite. He was completely self-generating. I remember him.
Did you understand his system?
No, I didn't. I didn't try. I actually. It sort of his whole thing went away. Not that I didn't think he was incredible, but his whole thing sort of went away from what I was interested in more and more. Just generally, I mean, not. I mean, you know, it's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? I'm a big fan of your early work.
Well, but let me just say to you, if you
early work.
You must hear 16 Men of Tane when I think he finally goes to acoustic bass and a real jazz drummer, and they play this material that he writes for it, and he's got trumpet on there, one of the Fowler brothers, and
I'll listen.
it's quite something. And there is syntax, but it's like, look, Alan at max, what is it, 02? 02? Yeah, please. I mean, the guy had some periods that I think are just gold, and then the bands with Husband, you know.
Cool. I see them. They're fantastic. It was just something about the naturalness of the early stuff, and then you know, his mind took him into more. You know, the sound becomes more processed, etc., etc., and that's the way to go. I mean, it's a fantastic way to go.
How are you about sound nowadays? Do you feel like you've got it locked into where you want it?
Pretty much. I mean, I'm late in life. I'm in touch wood. I'm kind of enjoying playing in the sense that I feel I'm in control of sound and expression, and I know where I'm going generally, not always, but I generally know where I'm going when I play, in the sense of not having it mapped out, but like I'm with it. I'm there with it. Sometimes I'm not. I mean, we did a festival the other day in Portugal, and there were some incredible bands on before, and I made the mistake of listening to them. So
never a good idea.
No, and then you start, and then you sort of. It was the point about saying this is because I think probably if you heard it, you say, "Oh, I was playing okay," you know. You wouldn't notice, but my brain was not. Or my spirit or whatever was not totally flowing with the thing, which is of course what I used to find when I was young. You'd have 1 gig out of 3 where you really felt you connected with the whole thing. Now, and I'm touching wood, more or less, I feel connected when I play. One of the things is the balance between, say with the soft machine, you talk about from nothing improvisation. Well, we do quite a lot of that where we just improvise from nothing. And it's everything in life is a balance. It's a balance of being comfortable enough with the blokes without being complacent, comfortable enough with the material without being bored with it, and comfortable enough when it comes to improvising. I mean, group improvisation is very much like a sort of a really good dinner party or something. In other words, if one person holds court the whole time, you know, then it's bad, and if somebody doesn't contribute at all, it's not good. But basically, if there's a flow of conversation that goes between the people, and that's what good free improvisers know how to do. They really do know how to pass the baton, take the baton, run with it, you know. And
I just did a record with Neil Alexander on keyboards and Percy Jones on bass.
Percy!
And can I just say the exemplary realization of can take it and lead or can make support happen if you need it. Percy Jones will go either way.
Yes, right.
He can start a fire or he can keep it boiling, you know, and that's what's so great about that kind of approach, you know, to be able to lead and follow and to shut up also, to lay out. I'm very big with laying out.
Oh, absolutely. Laying out is sometimes the most creative thing you can do. Let something else happen. So if you're at it the whole time, definitely.
One more. Go ahead.
I was just going to say Elton Dean and Hugh Hopper, when we first reformed, 2004, they'd been playing a lot on the free scene, and they were they probably couldn't be able to talk about this, but they were very aware of that. You know, space, non-space, when you pile in, when you don't pile in. And John Marshall was really good free player, as was Jeff Cline. And because all those guys, although we've talked about the friction between the straight players and the free improvs, a lot of them crossed over between.
A lot did, right?
Yeah, John Marshall, Jeff Cline, Oxley, of course.
Yeah.
Who could, you know, play.
What about
Bill
like
Evans and things.
John Taylor or Tilbury?
John Taylor. I mean, that is a guy who was total world class, unbelievable. I mean, never really, you know, you could hardly get arrested in Britain doing a gig at the back in the day. You know, I mean, you know, to put on a John Taylor gig and 20 people, which is most amazing pianist, amazing musician and pianist. I play with him. I can tell you a good story, actually, Greg. You'll like this. Maybe it's just round it off. But anyway.
Okay.
So, there I am at the Barry Summer School. So I played with Soft Machine, and I played with Stéphane Grappelli, which is all. So there's no controversy about where the one is. Okay. So it's the tutor's concert, and John Taylor sidles up to me and says, "Let's do a duo." And I went, "Oh my God," because he was known for his time divisions, right?
Right.
So I went, oh, bloody hell. So I thought, well, let's do a ballad. I said, let's do a ballad. He said, yeah, sure. I said, let's do What's New. He went, sure, yeah, sure, man. Sure. He was quite a, you know, he's one of those blokes who's not very expressive verbally. He went, yeah. So I thought, here we go. And I went, da, da, and off he went, you know. Substitute. And I just sort of rode on the crest of this thing. I didn't know where the one was or anything. I really didn't know what was going on. But I had a good enough ear and knew enough of the harmonies, the basic harmony of the tune, just to follow him. And I didn't know where we were. Didn't know. And we finished it, and it probably sounded okay, but I didn't have a clue. And it came off, and I said, I felt so insecure there. He went, good.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And then about 7 years later, we were doing another course. There was JT, comes up to me and said, let's do a duo. And I went, yeah, we're going to do a duo. We're going to do What's New, and I'm not going to get lost. And we did it again. And I honestly think it probably wasn't as good as the first time, because I knew exactly what was going on. And so I probably played it squarer, you know, whereas with him doing all this stuff, at least, you see, with the duo, it didn't really matter that I didn't know where the time was, where the one was, you know. So there was no idea in my mind where the one was at all.
I always thought it was an extreme choice for the Jarrett Trio to do the standards thing the way they did.
Yes.
For that amount of creative energy available for those.
I know. I agree with you.
Are you with me on that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure I'm totally with you, but I do understand.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. All the creative energy they had, Jack, him. Why were they doing just?
Because my favorite stuff is the free stuff, flying and
absolutely,
you know, or two chords.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I hear, you know, this is almost sacrilege. Sometimes I hear the Jarrett Trio playing a standard, and I go, this sounds quite ordinary.
I don't want to be sacrilegious as well. But I experienced one of the final trio concerts, and it was surprisingly ordinary. Not bad.
Yeah. No, not bad.
Beautiful. Bad. But, you know, if we were to measure things in that way, which is probably unfair.
Said that, came up on my feed, a version of him doing Blame It on My Youth. And it's the most beautiful thing. One of the most beautiful things that I've ever heard in jazz, certainly. And to have the confidence just to really play the melody and just play the chords, not fill it all in. In other words, he's saying, I don't have to prove I can play arpeggios all over the place. And he plays the tune with such respect, more than respect. He really gets back to the Jeff Beck thing. He really gets into the tune. And it is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's just amazing. And so I really respect that. The fact that he really doesn't do anything with it. He just plays it. But with such intention. get back to that point, he plays it with such intention. I am actually not playing the melody as a hopping off point for my improvisation. I'm playing the tune, and it's one of my favorite clips, actually. And you know, so having said that, okay, sometimes it sounds ordinary, sometimes it sounds absolutely so beautiful yet so simple. And there's a version of When I Fall in Love.
Yes.
Heavenly.
I asked Gary Peacock in his oral history what was the concept of playing those tunes in the Jarrett Trio. And he said, we play every tune as if it's the first time we're going to play it, and it's the last time we're going to play it.
Exactly. Now, to get back to your point about the standards, that when he described why he wanted to play standards, I absolutely got into it, because he says, in other words, you're not presenting your tune, you're not dictating the course, but at the same time you're giving a framework. Now, a really creative trio like that on a good day, the amount of information they're having to import is really quite small. So it's very improvisational. Exactly. Like, play it like you never played it before, and that you'll never play it again. I mean, that's a brilliant thing.
I love that we have that on tape and we have that in transcript, because that's insight to that trio. And I did Jack's as well. And
did you?
Yeah,
Wow.
I did. I was quite good.
Yeah.
Keith, never possible. Tried. It's the same person for all those guys and Charles Lloyd.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just whoever wants to talk. And speaking with you, John Etheridge, what a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much, Greg.
Through and through.
Really enjoyed it.
I mean, I feel like we could go on for hours and hours, and that would
we could.
That would be wrong. But Mozart said tons of stories, and he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
But you've sated so much of my my thirst for this world of music that is all encompassing.
Yes.
And you're the example of that. You're the embodiment of that. So everyone, John Etheridge, what a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Greg.
John, new album coming out, new tour.
Well, 13, the Soft Machine album was out last month or a month or so ago. And it's a cracker, actually. I don't always say that about it's really good, and it's been getting great reviews. And we're touring. I hopefully going to Canada. I don't know about USA, because of the whole visa situation is so tricky.
It's so tricky.
It's so tricky. We're doing England, Europe, hopefully Canada.
And the Soft Machine website?
Yeah, there's a Soft Machine website, and we have got a lot of gigs to do, which I'm really happy about. Because it's the best band I've ever been in.
It's a really great band, folks. It's an exemplary situation of all these things that we like in creative music. So I'm so happy that Soft Machine exists.
Oh, thank you, Greg. So much.
Great. And the fact that you ended up in New Jersey. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in New Jersey.
Very fond memories of being 6 feet away from your amp.
Right.
But John, all the best. And everybody, please like and subscribe and hit us on Patreon. This is the only place where this is happening.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
it might be fair to say. Yeah. But John, such a big admirer, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thanks so much, man. Thanks for inviting me. It was brilliant.
My pleasure.